Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Using my sportscasting background, I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players to gain more insight on what makes this team go. As the Detroit Lions enter a new gritty era, we'll look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we're reflecting on the just-released Detroit Lions NFL schedule for the 2023 season and also making some comments and predictions about it.
This is Corey Schlesinger, and you are listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
I'm joined today by Chris Haynes, a friend of the podcast. In addition to being an avid Detroit Lions fan and University of Michigan football fan, he also dives extensively into fantasy football. Thanks for joining the show today, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Looking forward to talking about the schedule.
So last year, the Lions went 9-8, and I did a little looking here. They actually lost 5 of their games by 4 points or less, but it's time for a new season. As of right now, the Lions are considered to have the 20th most difficult schedule, so we're on the easier side of things. But, we've heard that story before, right? Last year, the Lions were supposed to have one of the easier schedules. Turned out to be one of the tougher schedules, so you never know how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're judging it based off of last year's win-loss percentage and doesn't take any consideration for players being traded, new signings, new draft picks, or even coaching changes. So kind of take that with a grain of salt.
Exactly. Now, looking at the schedule as a whole, though, I'm actually thinking I like the way this works for us. There's some good things and some bad things. So let's get right into the first game of the season. The Detroit Lions are playing in Kansas City to kick off the NFL season. Some people are thrilled about this. Some are not so sure about this. It's not going to be an easy game. It's got to be one of the toughest places to start against one of obviously the best team. What are your thoughts on this?
So I'm hoping, first off, we're playing in week 1, so we're going to have the whole summer to prep for this first game, really. I mean, you looked at on Bleacher Report, they had a little stand outside of the Lions locker room, and they asked, which team do you look forward to playing the most in the season?
I saw that.
And over 50% of them said, no, Kansas City Chiefs. They're Super Bowl champs. We want them week 1. So hopefully they have the motivation going into that game that they're going to play up for it.
While there's some difficulties to this, I think it kind of sets things up in a similar perspective as last year. The Lions played Philadelphia to open the season last year. It was a home opener, not a road opener, but Philadelphia was considered one of the better teams, if not the best team, going into the season for the NFC. And I said last year, if the Lions somehow win this game, watch out NFL. If we're close, it means we got some legitimacy. Mm-hmm. And if we get blown out, it could be a long season. Now, it was a very close game. We only lost by like 3 points. Things didn't go so well for about 7 weeks after, but then things got turned on. So I think this game against Kansas City is going to be tough because it's a road game in a very difficult atmosphere. And Jameson Williams will not be playing in that game. And so there also sets up a difficult situation for us because that's an extremely talented player that we want on the field that's going to change the way defenses face us.
Yeah, absolutely. You look back to last year, probably one of the best teams up and down for the entire roster was Philadelphia. So going into that game, playing them tough, even though it was a home game, they showed some grit in that game. They came back in that game a little bit too. I think if I remember right, they were down 17 at one point and cut it to 3. So kind of similar situation here with the Chiefs. They've got a great roster. However, they've had some turnover too. So you look on the offensive side of the ball, they've got some new weapons on the outside that they have to acclimate. Hopefully with Detroit, not having Jameson Williams is going to be tough, but we didn't have him for most of the year last year either. So really, we just got to come out and have Marvin Jones now back with the Lions. That's going to help because he's got familiarity with the offense. And gosh, I'm excited to see what Jahmyr Gibbs does too.
Oh, I think Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, if the two of them can play to the potential we're thinking, that's going to make a big difference in that game.
Absolutely.
And so the Lions are a 7-point underdog in that game. And I guess they're favored in about 12 of their games, this schedule coming up as of right now. The game at Kansas City is the only game I really think they are legit underdogs in. Any other game that I think they're an underdog in, I really think should be more of a pick-'em type situation. And I've got confidence that they can win every game. Now, we know how the NFL goes. You can lose any game as well. So I'm not predicting them to win them all. But I think everyone would agree this game at Kansas City, the most difficult one. And it's going to set the tone for the season. If they win the game, I think Coach Campbell already came out and said, if we win this, people are going to think we should win the rest of them.
Yeah, so that, if they do win, that's going to put a lot more pressure on them. But hopefully Dan Campbell can kind of keep things together and temper those expectations. But watching the Lions around the locker room, they're hungry. They're ready to go after it. They don't expect to be handed anything. They got to earn it still. So hopefully with that mentality going forward, even if they win, they can go into week 2 against the Seahawks and look for some revenge there.
Well, and that's the thing. I like the idea of them opening the season on the Thursday because, like you said, you've got all summer to prepare for that game. Not only that, you now have an extra few days, an extra 3 or 4 days compared to playing on a Sunday. So you have that much more time to prepare for your next week. It was about 4 or 5 years ago the Lions opened on a Monday night against the New York Giants. It was exciting, but then you're playing on a short week going into week 2 already. The Lions are going to have extra time, and it's a home game. It'll be their home opener. That game against Seattle is a rematch from last year. It was an amazing game. My father-in-law and brother-in-law and some other family members were at that game, and they said Ford Field was amazing during that time. Our offense was on fire. The defense couldn't stop anything. Obviously, both teams are looking to be improved from last season. Seattle's a team not many people are talking about. They're talking about San Francisco. They're talking about Philadelphia. But Seattle made the playoffs, and they've made some moves in the offseason here, too. They could be improved. I think the big question mark is going to be Geno Smith.
Yeah, and really the game last year against the Lions was Geno Smith's coming out party, really. I mean, maybe going into that game, the Lions didn't expect Geno to throw the ball around like he did. That could have contributed to that defense giving up so many points. But the Seahawks have made some big improvements. They picked up Zach Charbonnet to back up Kenneth Walker. Pete Carroll wants that rotation on offense for running back. And then they got Jackson Smith-Njigba, probably the best receiver in the draft. Some people rated him as the best receiver.
Yep.
And they're wondering, well, why would you do that when you've already got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf? Well, offense wins games, and that's what they're looking to win. You got to score more points than other teams. So that offense is going to be scary.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting. 2 tough games, arguably 2 of the tougher games they have on their schedule to start the season off. After that, they're home for the Falcons. I don't think people have high expectations of the Falcons this year, but there's that guy, Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, they got Bijan. I was a little upset about that, but I've gotten over it. But they're going to have a rookie starting or Desmond Ridder, one of the two. But they got Bijan. They don't have Calvin Ridley anymore. So they're going to look for Drake London to step it up and Kyle Pitts. That's 2 guys on offense that I think that we can kind of focus on and shut them down, because after that they really don't have much.
No, but I think the big storyline going into this game, if I'm guessing what national media is going to do, they're going to say Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, running backs taken first round. How are each of them going to do in this game? What role will they play?
Right, and depending on how the Lions do the first 2 weeks too, not having that great of a run defense last year, they're going to talk about how much Bijan's going to run all over them. Hopefully with Jack Campbell, he could step up and make some plays in the middle of the field, and Bijan won't be able to get loose.
So after that game, the Lions are going to have a short week. They have to just go across the lake, though, fortunately, go into Green Bay. A rematch from the season finale last year, but you almost can't call it a rematch because you've got a different quarterback under center. There's a lot of changes in Green Bay. They're also playing on Amazon Prime, so it'll be a Thursday night game. And we're going to see Jordan Love as the full-time starter for the Packers against the Lions for the first time.
Yeah, we'll see what Jordan Love can do. He's going to have 3 games under his belt. The offense looks a little bit different. They don't have Allen Lazard anymore. They don't have Randall Cobb. I feel like they're just going to try to run the ball. They've got 2 running backs, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. They're dynamics. They're a good 1-2 punch. So if Jordan Love can just manage the game, I think that's going to be their game plan going forward.
Yeah, I think the Green Bay Packers at this point, you really have to just label them a mystery. You can't count them out, but don't give them too much credit. There's a lot to be determined there. The nice thing is, by playing this early game again so quickly, it gives us extra time for week 5. And week 5 are those pesky Panthers. Can we stop the run? We're going to have more time to prepare for that. And they're going to be a very different team from what we saw in Carolina last year.
They got a rookie quarterback now with number 1 pick, Bryce Young. See what he can do, but they also got a new running back in Miles Sanders. That's going to be totally different than what they had when they played the Lions last year. They didn't have anyone with Miles Sanders' skill set. They had basically Deontay Foreman, who's just a big tank trying to run over everybody, and got into the secondary and just we couldn't stop him. Would they have like 200 yards at halftime, something like that?
It was an astronomical amount. Now, fortunately for the Lions, we have a new linebacker. We have a very revamped secondary. And I think everyone will tell you defense should play a little better in this game because everyone's cleats are going to grab a little bit better on the surface. So
Yep.
both teams should expect improved defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that game last year. There was guys falling all over the place, and that kind of led to some of those big runs. Looking at the Panthers now, they've got a totally different team, especially on the outside. You know, they've got a couple guys that we're familiar with. They got DJ Chark, who played with us last year, who's going to want to have a big game against us, and then Adam Thielen. You know, does Adam Thielen have anything left in the tank? Probably. He's a possession receiver. He's a big receiver. So their offense looks totally different.
Yeah, and both of those receivers have something to prove. You know, we wanted Shark back. He chose to go to Carolina. He's trying to prove he can be that guy. I understood he had another procedure done in the offseason here to correct some stuff, but he wants to show everybody how good he can be. And Adam Thielen wants to show that he is still a very high productive receiver in this league and bounce back from his last year in Minnesota.
Yeah, and by week 5, any procedure that Chark had done, which I believe was on his foot, should be healed up. He should be running 100% by then. So that's going to be a tough game, but thankfully it's at home.
Exactly. And then after that, we hit the road. We go to Tampa. Very different than it would have been a year ago. Tom Brady's not there. Could be facing Baker Mayfield. Could be facing Kyle Trask. Not sure what to make of that. We'll find out, but I like our chances in that game.
Yeah. I mean, they still have a couple good receivers there, but they're getting a year older, and they don't have Tom Brady to throw the ball. So we'll see what Baker can do, and hopefully Baker doesn't pull something out of his hat like he did against the Raiders last year.
After 6 weeks, I'm thinking if the Lions can be 4-2, that's a very solid start, especially considering how much ground we saw them try to make up last year. Having that record would be good to set up week 7.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about 3 of the games. You know, I feel good about the Falcons, the Packers, and the Bucs. If we could win one of one of the games against the Panthers or the Seahawks, that'd be fantastic. You know, both are at home at least, so you know if we could split that at least and then be 4-2, I think that would be pretty good going forward.
So that leads us to week 7 in Baltimore. That game's going to be a 1:00 kickoff. This is a big game here. Lamar Jackson is back. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. as well. Now, I was last at a Baltimore Ravens Detroit Lions game back when Barry Sanders retired. I saw his final game and was unexpected, did not realize it was going to lead to a retirement after that. Now, instead of ending their career, we're hoping that somebody will be restarting their career because this is the first game Jameson Williams will be allowed back on the field after his suspension. And great timing for this because we're going to probably need him against a talented Baltimore team.
Yeah, so their offense looks a whole lot different. You know, for years Lamar played without talented receivers, and now they draft late Zay Flowers. We'll see what OBJ has left. And then they've got Rashad Bateman coming back from injury. So first couple of games last year he flashed, and then he got hurt. So you know maybe with the full off season, maybe he gets healthy. You know they've got 3 solid receivers.
Well, the one thing I really like going for the Lions in this game is with this being Jameson Williams' first game this season, there's going to be no game tape on him. So there's going to be an element of surprise that depending what we've done in practice over the summer and what we can implement going in, they're not going to have a lot of ideas what we might try and throw at them. So this is going to give Ben Johnson a little bit of an advantage going into this game if you're looking for a silver lining and everything.
Yeah, that's a nice silver line because you know there's like you said there's not really any game tape. He's got 1 catch for a touchdown and that's about it. You know, I went to a Lions game against the Ravens. That was the game that Justin Tucker set the NFL record for the longest field goal, and they lost by 1 in that game. So I would love to see them take out the Ravens because that game still hurts.
I agree. And if all goes well, I will be in Baltimore for that game. And speaking of Monday nights, their next game against the Raiders is on Monday night. And it just so happens my first ever Detroit Lion football game was on Monday night against the Raiders. I got to see Bo Jackson and Barry Sanders square off in the Pontiac Silverdome way back in 1990.
Wow, that would have been a fantastic game to go to. Bo Jackson was the real deal.
Both running backs had over 100 yards rushing. I think Barry outrushed them like 175 to 120 something. The Raiders unfortunately won that game by a score. So I'm not looking at the same outcome this time. We got some different teams going on. We don't have Bo Jackson to compete with. They do have Josh Jacobs, and we're looking at the Raiders being revamped as well with the changes they've made. They've got Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, but I don't have a lot of confidence in Josh McDaniels as a coach, and I'm liking the Lions' chances in that game.
Yeah, and then get another familiar face, right? Devontae Adams across the field from him. Hopefully Cam Sutton and company can shut him down. Really, the only other option they got is their newly drafted tight end out of Notre Dame and Michael Mayer, and we'll see how he translates over to the NFL. Tight ends usually take a little bit longer to acclimate to the NFL speed of the game, so I see that as a win. Monday Night Football. Hopefully, the Honolulu Blue can come out and play tough and show up for that game.
And we talked about earlier Bijan compared to Jameer. Well, it's going to be Michael Mayer compared to Sam Laporta here, the two tight ends taking back-to-back picks. So that'll be another storyline that I'm sure the Monday Night Football crew will be talking up.
And absolutely, and we know the Detroit Lions faithful will be out for that game.
So if we split those two games, we win one, lose one, that puts us at the bye. If we're 5-3 at the bye, I'm feeling good about that. We then have time to rest before hitting the road to going to the West Coast. It's our longest travel of the season. We have to travel all the way out to Los Angeles to play the Los Angeles Chargers. That game will be difficult because they have Justin Herbert, a well-respected quarterback. They have some good receivers, a good running back. A team that seems to have just chronically underachieved the last couple of years, so not quite sure what to make out of them. But I like our chances against them, but it won't be an easy game.
Yeah, Chargers have been a weird team over the last couple of years because they have the talent. It seems like they start off quick and then they hit a funk and then they kind of pour it on to try to make the playoffs at the end of the year. So, hopefully we're hitting them at a funk time, and that Week 9 bye gives us a chance to kind of see what our game plan should be. Maybe Mike Williams is hurt again at that point because he seems to always get hurt. So
great point. And so that leads us right to back-to-back division opponents at home. We host the Bears on Sunday, then the Packers the following week on Thanksgiving. The Bears are probably the most improved team on our division because considering where their record was, they had a big margin for improvement. They made a lot of great moves in this offseason, and the Packers, again, are that mystery. I am excited to see both of these games. I still like our chances winning both these games, and they're going to be important division games.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the Bears earlier on the schedule. Maybe before they have a chance to start really gelling and start the offense rolling. But Week 11, we've coming home after going on the West Coast. Hopefully, we don't have any jet lag and we can stop Justin Fields because Justin Fields is going to try to run all over us.
I agree. I really would have liked to have seen the Bears somewhere around week 6 or 7, something a little spread out and a little earlier before they get that chance to gel.
Week 12, Thanksgiving game, eating some pie, eating some turkey. Gosh, it's glad to see that we finally have a division opponent playing the Packers on that day. Gives us something a little bit more to play for. It seems like we've always played, a really good AFC team when we played the Bills or played Tom Brady and the Patriots and got waxed that game. Hopefully this is a game that we'll get up for and it's actually going to mean something within the division. So.
Yeah, I look forward to it. It's always a fun atmosphere there. I actually went to one of the games on Thanksgiving against the Packers a number of years ago at this point. But you're right. It seems like they give us, you gave us the Bills last year. You give us a really high marquee team. Not to say we don't want the competition, but it also makes it for a very difficult task. This is great. Not that it's an easier task, but it's a divisional game on Thanksgiving. It makes it even that much more meaningful because a win there is going to really help in the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the Bills, playing a marquee game like that was a fun game, but losing that game last year, just didn't make for a great Thanksgiving the rest of the time. So, beating the Packers will just be that much sweeter this year.
So then that gives us a little extra time before we hit on the road. We have to go to the Saints for a game, and then we go back and we play the Bears again pretty quickly there. But that Saints game's got some interesting storylines.
Yeah, we've got a revenge game for Jamal Williams. He left the Lions, went and signed with the Saints, had some bad blood there apparently because we didn't offer him as much of a deal as he thought he deserved. I'm still not really sure how that worked out because I think we probably offered him more than what he got. So he's going to be playing with a little bit more of an attitude and a little bit more grit. But he's splitting carries with Kamara, so we'll see what happens in that game.
And they've got a new quarterback, so seeing what Derek Carr can do, that'll also be interesting. So that won't be an easy game. It's on the road. And then after that, we go to Chicago. This is arguably our only cold weather game, really, in Chicago, early December. And as we said, I'm thinking we could possibly split with the Bears this season. I'm not naive enough to think that it's easy that we're going to win both games.
Yeah, you never know with that game. I mean, maybe that game's really windy and it's a grind 'em out game, and the turnover here, cost you the game. But What I do like is that we got David Montgomery, and that's a revenge game for him. So he's got a lot to play for. He wants to prove why the Bears should have signed him to a better contract and offer him a longer deal. So hopefully he has a good game, and by then we got Jamison Williams. He's going to be really acclimated to the offense, and hopefully the offense is rolling by then.
There's amazing the number of storylines we're seeing in this. Like you said, the David Montgomery aspect going against the Bears. So if we can go 3-2 or 4-1 over this stretch, we could be 8-5 or 9-4 with 4 games remaining. But those final 4 games are not going to be easy games. In Week 15, we are hosting the Denver Broncos. Now, this is to be decided. It could be a Saturday game, could be a Sunday game that hasn't been decided. But there's a really big question mark because we don't know what the Broncos are going to look like this year. We don't know what Russell Wilson's going to look like. This is one of those games that kind of goes in that same category as the Chicago Bears. I wish we were playing them in Week 4 because by Week 15, they will have had more time to figure out the kinks and work into things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But there's always that possibility that Russell Wilson's still the same guy as he was last year, and maybe he's not playing at that point. Maybe they move on from him. But kind of backing up, we coming off of 2 road games. Over the next 4 after that, 2 more road games. So 4 of our last 6 games on the road. That's a tough schedule. So hopefully going into those, we have a good winning record. We have a division lead, and then just kind of grind it out, and maybe go 500 over those last few games, and kind of look at a good standing at the end of the season. But first of the Broncos, at least we're playing them at home. Turnover at coach for them.
The other real interesting thing, and some people have already talked about it, is Sean Payton was the head coach in New Orleans when Dan Campbell was there. Mm-hmm. So it will be coach versus protege, if you will, or just coach versus former assistant. So that'll be an interesting part as well. From that game, though, we hit 2 road games in a row. Now, I'm hoping that we're a better team on the road this year than we were last year. So it's not such an Achilles heel as it was last year. But it's Week 16. There's 3 weeks left in the season, and there's one name we haven't said yet, and that's the Minnesota Vikings, who we have to play twice, and there's only 3 weeks left. So this is a really weird scheduling quirk, if you ask me. Now, I like that when we play them on Christmas Eve, our first match against them is on the road, so we can finish with them at home. But that first game on the road, this is also going to be a real interesting thing. I don't understand why they've waited so long. I think the Vikings are honestly going to regress from last year with seeing some of the players they've lost. And so you just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, when I look at the schedule, I think the schedule makers in the NFL, they want games at the end of the year to mean something. And what that tells me is they think that the Lions and the Vikings are going to be at the top of the division fighting for it. So why not throw them in the last 3 weeks playing twice? And then they also got the Cowboys in there. So, if those 2 games at the end of the season mean something, that they're going to be all about ratings. So waiting to Christmas Eve to play the Vikings on the road. Hopefully we get early Christmas present and we get a win out of that game. Dalvin Cook, we'll see what happens with him. He might be gone before the season. So their team is looking totally different than last year. I agree with you, Matt. I look for them to regress. This is about the time where Kirk Cousins implodes. December 24th, he's not really a primetime game player. I know it's a Sunday game, but, Christmas Eve, come on.
Hey, if that's considered prime time, I'll take it because we know Cousins and prime time don't gel so very well. So after the Vikings, we face the Cowboys. This is a Saturday night game. It's an 8:15 on ESPN and ABC. We're in Dallas again, though. We played them last year. The game didn't go the way we would have liked it to. It wasn't as much of a lost cause, I think, as a lot of people made it out to be. A couple things went a different way. We're a different team now. They're similar, but maybe slightly different. I like our chances in this game a lot. I actually really want to play them in Detroit again. I look forward to getting them back on our turf. But I'm not afraid of the Cowboys.
No, there's nothing to be afraid of with the Cowboys at this point. Cowboys are what the Cowboys are going to be. They're going to be a middling team that have high expectations. The fans are going to want them to go to the Super Bowl and think that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. But they play in a tough division. Week 17, they're going to be banged up, going against the Giants, going against the Commanders, and the Eagles. So those are some tough division games. They're going to get beat up. We're playing in Dallas. Got to watch out for that big jumbotron when punting. But hopefully we don't have another Brandon Pettigrew situation where we have a pass interference called and then they pick up the flag and give them the win. So
I would like nothing more than just to see the Lions take care of business in Dallas and win by 17 points and just kind of remove doubt, remove chance, and just take care of it. Now, again, even though I'm not afraid of the Cowboys, they're going to be a solid football team. You're playing them on the road. Anything can happen in any of these games. And then we come back home for the final game of the season against the Minnesota Vikings. Like you said, the NFL, when they look, they think what teams are going to compete. Last year, they had us playing the Packers. They knew we were going to compete. They didn't expect the Vikings to do what they did. But they were right about us and the Packers being right there. They must be thinking the Lions and the Vikings are going to be the two that are most likely going to be fighting for that division title.
Yeah, and they always love having those division games the last game of the year too. Hopefully at this point, though, Lions have a couple game lead on them, and the game doesn't mean as much. But, I know Dan Campbell, he's not going to go out there and not play his starters. He's going to want to beat the Vikings because he wants to take care of division opponents. So,
great points. And like you said, hopefully there's something wrapped up at that point. But if not, we also know playing the Vikings twice in the final 3 games could allow us that ability to move up if they are the team that we're fighting for that position with.
Or even better, eliminate them from the playoffs, which they would love to be able to do.
So last year, I kind of said I thought the Lions would win 8, maybe 9 games, and it happened. It worked out. This year, a lot of people are predicting 12 games. They're technically favored in 12 of their games this year, which would mean 12-5 record. Again, I only think they should be an underdog in 1 game, and that's their first game of this season. That being said, I'm going to say, as of right now, I'm looking at an 11-6 record. I didn't change my mind after they started 1-6 last year. They reeled off those wins. They did get to 9-8 at one point. Didn't think it was going to happen. But I look at the schedule. I think it's a good schedule. Those first 2 games are 2 of the tougher ones on the docket, and that's without Jamison Williams. There's a couple things that could go favorably later if they had been earlier, such as if we had the Broncos earlier or if we had the Bears earlier.
Sure.
But overall, I look at our schedule. We're not ending the game in Buffalo, in the weather. But I like the schedule. I'm going to go with 11-6 for the final record.
Yeah, I like 11-6. I first looked at it. I thought maybe 10-7. If maybe we split with Chicago or split with Minnesota, those first 2 games are going to be tough to win. That would be a pretty good year. I don't know if the fans would appreciate a 10-7 record, especially after winning 9 games last year. Well, what's going to come down to is, do they make the playoffs? Do they win the first round? Because I don't think making the playoffs for this team is what the fans want. They want to be able to go deep in the playoffs, maybe make it to the NFC Championship game.
I think winning a playoff game is something the fans want to see because it hasn't happened since the 1990s. And so capturing that would be amazing. Capturing a division title would also be amazing because that hasn't happened since 1993. So if they could get a division title and even win just 1 playoff game, it would accomplish more than what many Lions fans have seen in their lifetime.
Right, yeah, and when they won the division, it wasn't even the NFC North. It was the NFC Central at the time, and it was 5 teams in that. And I think, if I remember right, Tampa Bay was in the division at that time. So it'd be great for us to win the NFC North for the first time. And like you said, for our fans out there, shout out to my father-in-law, Dorn Hoig. He's been a lifelong Lions fan, and he's been miserable about halfway through the year because, it's the same old Lions. But like your podcast says, I think we're not the same old Lions anymore. So hopefully this year we're, 10-7, 11-6 would be fantastic. If we get better than that, it'd be just icing on top.
And that younger generation who didn't see the Lions' success in the 90s with Herman Moore and Barry Sanders and Chris Spielman.
Yeah.
They are anxious to see this. Yeah, they saw some highlights with Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford and some others here before. But now we're trying to get that victory, trying to show that the franchise has turned the corner. And so while I'm thinking 11-6, it could be 10-7, it could be 12-5. There's a lot of uncertainty because there are so many variables that go into a season. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But I'm looking forward to it. I like the way it sets up. Yeah, there's some things I would like to change, but there's some things I'm very happy that aren't on the schedule.
Yeah, and you never know. Injuries happen, either by our team or against the teams that we're playing. Those later games, there could be coaching changes. There could be lots of different things that happen. So the NFL is not easy to predict. If it was easy to predict, then Vegas would be out of money. Teams change over the course of time. You never know what's going to happen. That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it exciting that you look at a team like Jacksonville last year who came off of a terrible year the year before, and they go and make the playoffs. You look at the Bengals. The Bengals were just a laughing stock of the league for a long time. They draft Joe Burrow, and they've turned around, and now they're a contender. Maybe that's what the Lions need. They got Jared Goff now, and they've got a good coaching staff. They've made some good draft picks. Maybe that's what they needed, and now they're going to be the next ones coming from the cellar.
And like we said, every game matters and anybody can win every game, which is why it's so important to bring everything to every game. And that's why, even though I think they should only be underdogs in one game, I don't think you can count any game as a guaranteed victory because we see every year those unexpected upsets. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. It was fun.
And thank you so much for tuning in, folks. Please subscribe to Not the Same Old Lions podcast to get alerts about new episodes. Also, follow the show on Twitter at Matt Soltesiak. Check us out on YouTube as well. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.